Keir Starmer is quickly becoming viewed as one of the most ineffective prime ministers in UK history. His authoritarian approach and out-of-touch governance have eroded public trust at an alarming rate. But it's not just the public turning their backs on him. Starmer is also facing escalating pressure from within the Labour Party itself, all pointing towards an impending resignation. Let's delve into this unfolding drama. And don't forget to like and subscribe for the latest updates on British politics. Starmer's recent policies have not only stirred controversy but have ignited a wave of outrage across the UK. From abrupt tax hikes and controversial welfare cuts to disregard for Labour's core values, Starmer has seen a sharp decline in public support. Increasingly, the British public is left wondering if this is still the Labour Party they once trusted and stood by. A clear example is a recent report from the Office for Budget Responsibility, OBR, which revealed that the government's claim of £22 billion, a figure used to justify the tax increase, was entirely unfounded. The record-breaking £40 billion tax hike, the largest in the country's fiscal history, now seems unjustifiable as the numbers presented were misleading at best. The public is now demanding an apology from Starmer for presenting false and deceptive information before Parliament. During last week's Prime Minister's Questions, PMQ, Starmer attempted to defend his policies, but ended up facing the very criticisms he once hurled at his opponents. The glaring disparity between his promises and actions has led the public to feel deeply betrayed as they bear the weight of this growing financial burden. His previous pledges to avoid reckless tax increases now seem like empty rhetoric, leaving people feeling openly deceived. Starmer's economic plans and budget strategy are also piling pressure on vulnerable groups like the elderly, low-income families and working women. The successive tax hikes have not only restricted the spending power of middle and low-income households, but have pushed them into a spiralling financial deadlock. Disillusionment is spreading as Britons face an increasingly bleak future under Starmer's leadership. The public had always expected a reliable transportation system, solid infrastructure, and quality education. But Starmer's administration has slashed the most essential benefits. His decision to cut winter heating benefits for the elderly has sparked intense public outrage, as elderly citizens who contributed to building the country now feel abandoned by the very party they once trusted. Under Starmer, the Labour Party appears to have lost its fundamental values, leaving the public only with disappointment and resentment. Adding fuel to the fire, Starmer chose to maintain and even expand the cap on benefits for families with 3 or more children, a policy introduced by the Conservatives and vehemently opposed by Labour. This move has caused significant division within the party, deepening the sense of betrayal among loyal supporters. A party once dedicated to fighting child poverty now appears to be pushing large families into even harsher conditions. Scottish Labour leader Anna Sarwar did not hesitate to condemn Starmer, criticising the policy for exacerbating child poverty. Sarwar and many activists have called for Starmer to scrap the benefit cap, viewing it as unjust and a complete departure from Labour's commitment to aiding the poor, a sign that Labour is straying dangerously from its core values. Several veteran Labour MPs who once stood by Starmer can no longer remain silent. Instead of listening, Starmer has resorted to heavy-handed tactics to silence dissent, creating deep rifts within the party. MPs like John McDonnell, a defender of the party's traditional values, have been sidelined for merely expressing their views. This has further tarnished Starmer's image in the eyes of the public. Once a party that encouraged open debate, Labour now seems dominated by a rigid and intolerant leader. Internal pressures are mounting as more members feel abandoned by Starmer's policies. Those who once believed in him are now filled with disappointment, watching as the party drifts away from its core principles and increasingly ignores the people it represents. The public criticisms from within the party indicate that discontent is widespread and could soon erupt into open dissent. Under Starmer's leadership, Labour has not only lost public support, but is also fractured by internal division. Many analysts predict that Starmer could go down as one of the worst prime ministers in modern British history due to his failure to unite the party and his inability to address critical national issues. With his image fading, Starmer is weakening a Labour Party once known for its strength and unity, a party now alienated from the very people it vowed to protect. Every suspension decision Starmer makes only pits him further against Labour MPs and alienates the loyal voters who have stood by the party for decades. Traditional voters feel increasingly disillusioned, sensing that the core values Labour once cherished and upheld are now being overshadowed by Starmer himself. His actions exude an authoritarian style, inflexible and dismissive of any criticism. The question that echoes among Britons now is whether the Labour Party remains the idealistic home that generations once cherished and championed. In reality, Starmer cannot ignore the disastrous approval ratings much longer. In just 90 days, his popularity has plummeted by a staggering 36 points, an extraordinary drop. Now, only 33% of Britons hold a positive view of Starmer, a number that sounds a stark warning about the chasm growing between him and the public. This gap shows no sign of closing. In fact, it widens by the day. The issue goes beyond specific policies. It's the palpable sense of betrayal and disappointment in promises that have proven hollow and disconnected from reality. As British politics enters a turbulent phase, the question, where will Starmer go from here, becomes increasingly urgent. With approval ratings in freefall, unpopular tax hikes, and widespread discontent brewing among core supporters, Starmer is steering both himself and the Labour Party into a precarious dead end. The feeling of disillusionment is spreading as voters sense Starmer has abandoned the core principles that once built and bound the party together. The time for the general election is approaching, and with each passing day, the Labour Party's chances of regaining public trust are becoming increasingly tenuous. Starmer is facing not only voter disappointment but also a wave of dissent from his own colleagues. These are no longer isolated anecdotes. They have transformed into genuine political issues as many long-standing party members, who once embodied and upheld Labour ideals, begin to leave. This division signals a deepening crisis, one that threatens to shake the very structure of the party if not addressed promptly. Starmer's ability to mend voter relations is now crucial. Voters are looking for a leader who truly understands and empathises with their struggles, not just a string of distant promises. The gap between Starmer's flowery rhetoric and the harsh realities faced by workers continues to widen. If Starmer fails to take decisive action to bridge this divide, he may very well obliterate the image of a Labour Party that stands for workers, representing families and those who feel sidelined in an increasingly disconnected system. Moreover, the future of the party is threatened by internal fractures as factions begin to clash under the pressure of Starmer's leadership style. The erosion of trust is not just the voice of a few individuals. It has become a worrying refrain from seasoned activists and loyal voters. The more he maintains a rigid stance and ignores legitimate criticism, the higher the likelihood of an internal revolt against Starmer, a scenario that could lead to a power struggle or even a profound schism within the party, further diminishing public trust. With the election looming, Starmer must demonstrate a willingness to change, listen, and genuinely respond to the aspirations of voters as well as the needs of the party. This requires not only a reassessment of disappointing policies, but also a proactive effort to engage with those who feel abandoned by both the party and the government. Building a culture of inclusive dialogue and cooperation is the first step for Starmer to gradually restore trust and garner public support. What do people think about the issues we have discussed in today's video? Please leave your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel to stay updated on the latest political developments in the UK. Thank you all, and see you in the next videos.